Good, boys. Looking good. Keep it red. Yes, that's it. Bright. Make it bright. Them buggers don't care much for squids, so hopefully if we can make it big enough, it'll scare them. Rocky, my boy. They've got 8 tentacles, like you've painted. But they've also got them 2 big uns with the giant pods on the ends. Don't forget about them. Aye, that's a boy. Up to it then. Boats in the water at sunup, lads, so let's not dawdle. Keep at it until it's dawn or till it's dark. The following morning, the ferry Night Spear slipped into the Yondabakari River waters, ready for its latest voyage from Melfish to Biston, carrying a few passengers and the usual milled grain. George, the ship's captain, stood at the helm of the ferry, smiling to himself as the sun broke on the horizon in front of him. It had been smooth sailing so far, and he was pleased. The last few crossings on the Night Spear had been interrupted by new local dwellers of the deep. George wasn't sure how large the school of them was, but they were attacking any ships that didn't fight back and stealing the cargo and a couple of crew members, presumably all for food. George himself had almost been taken in the last crossing, hence his desire to get a large, bright red squid painted on the bottom of his boat as soon as possible. Once upon a time he had heard in a tavern in Riddleport that it might scare off these pests, and so far, it had worked. George was so pleased with himself he began to hum his favorite tune, and just as he hit the initial swell, thunk! The sound of something ricocheting off his hull was unmistakable to the aging captain. Instead of finishing the verse, he uttered his favorite curse and paused to wait as silently as he could. The peaceful sounds of the river were all that he could hear. George was just about to admit to himself that he was being paranoid when thunk, thunk, thunk! The sound of many objects bouncing off the bottom of his hull resonated up onto the deck. "Lads!" George called at the top of his lungs. "We may have made a grave mistake. To your spears and hold on tight." Hey there, creatures. James coming at you from the future, the editing den here. So this episode was a little bit of a unique one. I had a fever through the roof and I was very, very sick throughout the whole recording of it, which is not ideal because I forgot to do something very, very important. And that was to press record on OBS. So I've done the best I can to recreate our original recording. That being said, it doesn't have Freeman and I's live video, so there will be stock images there, but the rest of the images all the way through will be the same as they would have been in the original recording, including the addition of a creature midway through. So thank you again for bearing with us, and we hope this never happens again. But on to the episode. Hey there, creatures, and welcome to Encounter This, a podcast exploration of the creatures from Pathfinder 2nd Edition and the lore that surrounds them.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Encounter This number 2 after a bit of a hiatus after the holiday season. And myself, Freeman Grindylow, is going to join James the Scar Kid to explore a curious little creature called the Grindylow? Grindylow. I'm going with Grindylow. It sounds better. How you feeling, James?
I'm good. I'm here.
You're here.
Yeah.
It's been a rough season.
Good.
It's been a rough season.
It has been.
Winter is continuing to rear its ugly head, sweeping sicknesses across staff of all kinds. It's been rough. It's been a rough go. But we're here.
Yeah, so Unfortunately, that means a little bit of a smaller episode for the listeners today, or what my body's hoping is a little bit of a smaller
Yeah.
episode. But we are not compromising on the content. So
Yeah, sometimes we go out of our way to choose one that's going to be a little bit shorter, just to, it's still interesting stuff. We don't skimp, but sometimes we need a quick one in order to fill the gaps created by who knows what. But yeah, the old Grindylow. I don't know much about this creature off the top of my head. I remember one particular instance of them, I believe, in a Glass Cannon Network show from a while back. But otherwise, I'm a little bit in the dark in my head. I think I have an image in my head of what they look like. But for those of you who want to follow along, hit up the old Bestiary number 2, page 128. And take it away, James. Tell me about this weird little thing.
sure. This is I picked this character this creature because I thought it was going to be something totally different than what it actually is. I thought this was going to be like way more related to the Grendel from Beowulf, which one of us will cover eventually.
Sure.
But it turns out they're just fucking aquatic goblins.
That's the image I had in my head. Like a goblin with octopus tentacles. That's who I remember.
That's exactly it. They're
Cool.
a blue goblin with octopus tentacles in the bottom. That's it.
I love it. It looks terrifying.
Yeah, I really love the Pathfinder goblins and how vicious they look. Like this thing's got like 2 rows of teeth. Like it's really, really hardcore.
Yeah, it does, eh? Yeah, it doesn't look very friendly.
No, and they're not. This didn't get the kind of gentle refresh that goblins got, where they're kind of like these cute, dorky little creatures. This is just mean. I mean,
yeah.
if you can't tell by the goat, the little goatee,
the goatee,
ponytail.
Yeah, the little tied up goatee's hilarious. Yeah. What a weird little touch.
Yeah. There's a little ponytail on the back too. Like
there's a couple of them. There's one on each side. It's got the pigtails going. Exactly the sort of creature I would expect to see hanging out a sea hag's lair or something.
Yeah, and they're very closely related. So a lot of this is actually going to be quite a little bit of a refresher on the sea hags, actually, which is episode 7.
Oh my god, that's so long ago. Holy crap.
It's 110 episodes ago.
February still feels like it wasn't that long ago to me. I don't know. I'm probably going to put so much.
It feels like last month.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like. Yeah, that's wild. Episode 7.
I guess you never forget your first big sweet.
Yeah, I guess so. Wild.
Yeah, so they are extremely territorial, as you can probably tell by its posture in the official 2E art.
Mm-hmm.
They are known to be sensible, so there is the possibility of negotiation if you want to go down that route, but it's not likely.
Okay. So they're not like suicidal or anything. They'll maybe talk or run at the very least.
Yeah. Really, they really think like they really remind me of the one-E goblins, like just one-E goblins but underwater.
Sure.
So much like those goblins, they rarely build structures, but it isn't unheard of. It does happen. And they tend to make their homes in shallow water, so lakes, rivers, coastal reefs, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, if possible, they tend to make their lairs in shelters of sargasso. So this is what sargasso is. This is a photo from underwater, and this is just a mass of floating vegetation made primarily from the seaweed sargassum.
Okay, cool. Oh, yeah. It's good you said that from underwater, because it doesn't look like it's going to be at all. It looks like it's floating. But
yeah, but if you look at the very top of the image, you can see some water distortion in the orange. Like this is taken from a distance. So
like
really
it's like a seaweed beaver dam flotilla.
Yeah, and it's mobile. So this just floats through the ocean. These are like cool. In our world, they're like floating ecosystems. There's
neat.
In coral reefs in Blue Planet, I think by the BBC, they do like a really deep dive on the ecology of a sargassum, and it's really neat.
Really cool. I like that.
Yeah, but they can also reside in abandoned ships, like really anywhere there's shelter to be found. Any kind of place you would usually find like a cephalopod. Like it needs to be a confined space that has its own general ecosystem where they can hunt, where they can live. Mm-hmm. They have been known to gather into schools. The most we have on record, according to legend, is about a few hundred. So a few hundred of these things just whipping around your coral reef sounds like hell on earth.
Yeah. Yep.
But smaller schools, like 20 and under, tend to be allied under a strong aquatic creature, specifically listed by Paizo as sea hags.
All right. There we go. Called it. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. That being said, if a sea hag has this school of like 20 of them, if a major obstacle occurs, like they go to fight the party and just get decimated, they will scatter and form their own former smaller schools. They just
Okay.
There's no loyalty to these creatures whatsoever.
Sure. Okay.
And in the same vein, if fruitful, they'll infest a hunting ground for generations, but they again are very easily driven away by predators.
All right. Cowards at heart, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're skilled scavengers, and they'll pretty much eat anything they can catch, and an old boot to a PC.
Yeah, anywhere from an old boot to a PC.
Yeah,
you can quote him on that. I love that.
So one of the things that really drew me to these creatures is the little sidebar tidbit lore,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about squids, and they hate squids. They loathe them, or
Really?
anything that even looks like a squid. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they hate them so much that some sailors will paint giant squids on the bottom of their hull to ward off Grindylows.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It can, unfortunately, often have the other effects where a school of Grindylows thinks they're big enough to take the octopus, so they'll attack the boat.
Always the opposite.
Or the squid,
happening.
sorry.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah. But this specific hatred does not extend to other tentacled creatures or cephalopods. In their community, octopodes are considered the epitome of grace and power, and that is in quotes from Paizo from the Bestiary too. Like, they love octopodes, but they don't fuck with squids.
Okay, weird. Just a natural inclination towards hating the old squiddy pies. Sure thing.
Yep, pretty much. And the sidebar is titled Giant Grindylows. So most are small, but like a lot of aquatic creatures, they can keep growing throughout their lives. They can be large or larger, even to the point where Grindylows can gain the giant trait if they're like in the open ocean and have good hunting grounds.
Oh, wow. They gain the giant trait. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not like stats for it, but if you just wanted to make a larger size Grindylow, you just give it the giant trait, and I'm sure you just give it the expert. But that would be kind of terrifying. This thing just 10 feet tall shooting at you.
Yeah, no thanks. No thanks at all.
Yeah. They did exist in 1E, but there is no canonical image. They were 1/2 CR, and they're from the Bestiary 2 again, page 140.
Oh, they didn't have an image in the Bestiary. Interesting.
No, yeah. Okay. They have a large head and numerous teeth, and you can see, again, in the 2E art, there's that double row of very shark-like teeth.
Yeah.
And they're described as having a goblin torso and a greasy octopus below.
A greasy octopus.
Yeah. Very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder if, because I guess they don't always include an image in the bestiaries, not for everything, but and harder to find are the ones that are images that are in the adventure paths, because they're not usually available to the public under the licensing and stuff. But I do wonder if there is an image from what was the adventure path that we know from Ruins of Aslan. Yeah, I wonder, because they're in that. I wonder if there's an image in that AP somewhere. There might very well.
I tried to look at the pawn collection, but we didn't have a copy of it floating around.
Okay.
So that's always my backup, is to go to the Adventure Path pawn collections, because we normally have a digital copy of it, and I couldn't find one. So I don't know if they just didn't make them for Ruins of Aslan, or we just don't have one in our library.
Okay.
Or I didn't know where it was in our library. One of the two.
I know we've got the PDFs for the adventure itself. But the pawn collection, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
in any case,
we can move on to mythology and folklore, because I forgot to hit the the Pathfinder button when we first started, like I always do.
We're real good at this.
We were so bad our last episode. I just had to find where things started, like the old days.
Oh, you know what? I pulled up the adventure path. We don't have to show. I don't even know if we can show it, but I'll show it to you anyway. There's a named Grindylow in there called Brine-tooth. There's the image. It looks
cool.
a lot more shark-like in its face.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Let me see what I can do about getting that into
book
our
one
image
for anyone who might have
here.
the adventure path for that. It is a female giant Grindylow, actually fighter. How cool is that? And it's a medium size. That's really neat.
Right on.
But it looks awesome.
Okay, here we go. There is
it?
that Grindylow.
There you go. Nice.
Neat.
How cool is that thing?
This one's way more shark-like.
Way more shark-like, yeah. Big time. Very much less goblin-esque.
Actually, are you familiar with the goblin shark?
Oh yeah, vaguely actually. I suppose.
It kind of looks like that. I don't want to put the goblin shark on air because it's one of the most horrifying creatures that has ever existed.
This has definitely come up on this show, I think.
It has to have. I hate these things. They're horrifying. But it kind of looks like a goblin shark a little. Google it your own risk, listeners.
Oh yeah,
they are the stuff nightmares are made
horrifying.
Yeah,
it's so good.
All right.
Yeah,
so I'm not gonna put the yeah. There's not a lot here. They are known as Grindylows or Grundylows, and they come from Yorkshire and Lancashire counties. I really hope I got that right.
Sure.
And the name is only thought to be connected to Grendel of Beowulf. There is no stock connection.
Okay.
In lore, these aren't particularly popular. I expected to find a lot more examples of them, but it's really just from the two cultures.
Okay.
So they are small humanoids, scaly skin, usually with a greenish complexion, sharp claws and teeth, and long, thin arms with extended fingers. They live in shallow waters waiting for children. And tell me if this is familiar.
Classic.
They grab their victims and pull them under with their powerful grip.
Oh. It's so familiar. I feel like we've covered it several times.
Yep. And the lure has been used to frighten children away from places where they could fall in and drown because, of course, it's better to lie to your children than explain to them the truth. And then in a lot of this mythology, they're mentioned in the same breath as familiar names to us. Nellie Longarms, Peg Powler, Jenny Greenteeth, the water hags that we're familiar with. Every entry I've found that mentions the Grindylow, Wikipedia, a couple of independent websites, they all include these three water hags.
Okay.
So
yep.
the lore is naturally entwined from that English culture, which is pretty great.
Makes sense. One monster begets another monster effectively over time when you're telling those tales, right? And sometimes they end up separate from each other, but they're, there's always some sort of close relation along the way.
Exactly. The same kind of thing we talked about in the Troll Suite. Like things just mish and meld together, and then we as TTRPGs pull them apart and focus on the individual features that make them unique to create these unique creatures.
Kind of reinvent them and stuff,
Yeah. So that's it. That is the cultural lore. That's all we get.
All right. Fair enough.
But they do make a couple of appearances in pop culture, begrudgingly. This, as far as I can tell, is a still from a Harry Potter movie.
Yeah.
I could not figure, it was not easy for me to find where this image came from.
Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. I
feels
forgot
right.
About it. I forgot about this, but yeah, this does ring a bell. Because they have
doing the egg
challenge
right at the very beginning.
There's a whole challenge thing happening in that story at that point amongst these different schools of wizardry, and one of them is an underwater challenge, and they ended up being attacked by these creatures. I've completely forgot that was a thing, but yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah, so it was definitely part of the film. The problem is I can't. There's a lot of the same 2 or 3 pictures of fan art, so narrowing down where they actually come from. And I wasn't going to rewatch Goblet of Fire to figure that shit out.
Yeah.
Goddamn sure. But so this could be fan art, but I'm pretty sure it's from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I'm basing that almost 100% on the WB watermark in the bottom left corner. So.
Exactly.
But you are correct. They are from Harry Potter, and Professor Lupin specifically taught about them. Apparently, they make a couple of appearances in the books.
Sure.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Harry Potter is a series that that just repeated a lot of what D&D and Pathfinder and all these games have done. Is rework many myths and tales into sort of new narrative, what have you. So it hasn't done anything like, it's done its own reinterpretations on many things, and not an original concept per se, but tries its best to do original takes. For better or for worse.
And I mean, definitely that last bit. I'm actually tempted to stop mentioning Harry Potter because a lot of it seems to be lifted from some of the early monster manuals, and J.K. Rowling is objectively a monster, so I don't love giving her airtime, but I also understand that we need to separate the art from the artist, even if
that's just it, right? It's a massive cultural impact, and as much as D&D and TTRPGs have like come out of a nerdy obscurity over the decades. And it is something a little more mainstream. There are other avenues of showing these different bits of folklore and mythology, and Harry Potter just happens to be one of the largest out there. And it's evergreen at this point. Like, it's going to be relevant to our generation forever. So that's basically it. Yeah. So,
but on to an artist we don't need to separate from their content. This is a novel called The Scar by China Mieville. So this book specifically features them as a hostile race, possibly the main antagonist. I haven't read this one.
Okay.
And I really hope I pronounced that properly. But China Mieville is renowned fucking nerd. Huge D&D player, and even helped write Pathfinder Chronicles Guide to the River Kingdom, which we'll have linked in our blog.
Okay.
Which is, as I'm sure some of our listeners know, one of the best sources of Galarian lore that exists.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
And that's pretty much it for pop culture too. Like, they're just not a common creature as far as I could tell. I'm sure there's more instances of them appearing, and probably even some more relevant than the 2 pages they got in Harry Potter or whatever, and the relatively obscure China Mieville. I'm not saying he's particularly obscure, but you really have to fall in the right circles to know Mieville. But
sure, yeah, I've never heard of him, so I have no idea.
Yeah, you would know his work for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's. He even helped write a bunch of comic books in the late '90s.
Cool.
Really impactful on the nerd culture while being a cool guy. So,
neat.
But that's all we have. As far as comparison goes, it's pretty straightforward. The only real difference is blue skin on the Grindylows in Pathfinder versus green skin in Mythology.
Okay.
In Pathfinder, they tend to be more goblin-esque, whereas in real world lore, they tend to lean more towards the sea hag. But other than that, from what little information we have, they've got those powerful arms. They like to eat people, and they are scary.
Smart enough to run away and or use a weapon. Yep. Fine by me. Let's get into mechanics then.
Yeah, I mean, we may have to retcon calling them intelligent when we hit mechanics, but here we go.
I didn't say intelligent. I said smart enough.
You are correct. They're smart enough.
Don't misquote me.
Okay. And as always, we'll have the archives of Nethys linked over on our blog post, so you can check that out if you want to follow along for this part. Oh. So I'd make you guess their level, but it's 0. They're a CR0 or
okay.
CL0 or whatever we're calling it these days.
Yeah, just level. I just go with level now.
Yeah, that's kind of me too. Yeah. So they've got a 15 AC and 14 HP, and they do start small. But again, we've talked that they can get to medium, even if they have the giant trait from 1E at least.
So
I
they're
skipped
cannon
alignment
fodder,
because
basically.
it's
They
no
can
longer.
just
Yeah,
they're just taking on a whole bunch of damage and dying in waves.
yeah, and we'll get into it in Homebrew, but that's how I would run them.
Mhm.
Is exactly that way, just as cannon fodder. They are small. They are carrying the aberration and amphibious trait. Because of that aberration, the recall knowledge is occultism,
Mhm.
and that's 14 unspecified is 12, specified is 9. I guess any seafaring lore, I'd probably give them the specified lore because these are not uncommon creatures.
Yeah, I mean it's like if you had like sailing lore, I might call that unspecified. If you had like sea creature lore, I would call that specified or something like that. But I kind of yeah, it's always open to interpretation, right? But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the only it's challenge level is why I would give it specified lore.
sure,
It's a level 0 creature.
yeah,
Like this
common
creature
enough, yeah.
means nothing. Yeah. They've got a 5 perception because they're a baller.
Okay.
Their land speed is 10 feet, which is pretty great, and their swim speed is 25, which is also pretty great.
Mhm.
For those of you who are unaware, octopi can walk across land. That's not they
Yeah.
just do that sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah, they're not like fast, but they're not a snail either. So it makes sense. That's pretty cool. Immediately though, it's just like okay, 10 feet on land. That's when you're thinking about combat, it's at a tremendous disadvantage for sure. 10 feet on land is brutal when it comes to rounds in combat. However, you're likely to fight this thing in water, which is always, especially at a low level, is pretty much always putting the pieces at a disadvantage. So that's the real kicker, right? It's like these things are more dangerous in water, and understandably so. But like at a
Yeah.
low level for a PC, like you're very unlikely to have too many water benefiting abilities at the end of the day.
And when we get into some of their abilities, I believe these things get real dangerous
Oh
real
yeah,
fast. Yeah, like if
level
you are a
one's
level
crazy.
1 or level
Yeah.
2 or level 3 party fighting these things in the water, you might just be better retreating. Languages, they just speak Aquan, so you are not communicating with these things at that level for the most part.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe the wizard could if they chose right.
Possibly, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And they have dark vision,
Okay.
which again makes sense to me because they live in the water and the water's almost always dark. So,
Yep.
Ability scores are nothing. They cap out at 3 for Dex and Wisdom, but they've got a -1 to Intelligence, and their Strength is also only 1.
Okay.
They do have a couple of complementary skills with Athletics, Stealth, and Survival.
Yeah, that adds up. Just living in the
Yeah.
wild kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yep. They've got a 6 Fortitude save, 7 Reflex, and 5 Will.
Yep.
And if you are lucky and your GM is kind, you will be able to find a spear on them afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it's a rather crude spear, but there it is.
Yeah, I'm really surprised Paizo didn't put it in air quotes.
Yeah,
I guess it would just be regular quotes if it's on paper.
Yeah.
Holy shit, I'm stupid today.
That's a good point. Self burn. I can't recall, but I think Tui might have done away with the short spear kind of idea for a weapon. I could be wrong with
It's
that.
not. It's just called a spear, but there's also a dueling spear, and then there's a 2-handed spear.
Yeah, and then
Spear is always my go-to weapon.
sure, yeah, it feels more appropriate since there is no short spear that I'm aware of. I feel it would almost feel more appropriate for it to be a javelin as opposed to a spear, given it's a small creature. So maybe it's a spear for it, but it's a javelin for you. Yeah, but that's just pedantic at the end of the day, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think javelin has a melee attack though. I think it's ranged only. Is that right?
No, anything that's a ranged thrown weapon can be used melee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but not the other way around. I mean, you can throw a greatsword, but you're gonna take a penalty to that, and it's not going to be that effective. And now you've thrown away your greatsword for no reason.
Improvised damage.
Yeah. It's kind of stupid. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe the range is different or something. I mean, it doesn't look different. Yeah, the range is different, so maybe that's why. Um, it also might have something to do with the physical resistance of water and the way a spearhead would cut through that, because a javelin's just a straight line.
Yeah.
And I mean, I never see anybody underwater with a javelin.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about a throwing javelin. I'm not thinking about this creature throwing it at all. I'm just thinking about
Okay.
length and crudeness of its build more
Right.
than anything. So like I said, spear for it, javelin for you at best, because it's just not. It's probably not designed to withhold a hefty combat on land. Like by any means. It's just meant to be straightforward, the thrusting in the water.
Right. Well, it's not. It has a ranged attack. So.
Oh well, okay. Well, I'll just shut my mouth then.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how ranged attacks work underwater in 2e, but and I didn't bother to research it. But let's start with the passives because I like getting these out of the way.
Cool.
Its only passive is called Clinging Suckers.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
So when grabbing a creature larger than itself, it just attaches. The target is grabbed but not immobilized. But if the target moves, the Grindylow moves with it. And if the target is medium or smaller, it gets a -5 to speed. And the Grindylow is flat-footed while it's attached to that creature.
Okay.
Or off guard.
Off guard, yeah. That's fun. That's a fun little thing. It's just like, because when you're grabbed, you're flat-footed. So this thing's making itself flat-footed at the same time. But it's not stopping you from moving. You're moving around, and you're both just like awkwardly flat-footed and slowed down. It paints a nice little picture.
Yeah, I really, really like that one. I think it's real fun. They have 3 melee attacks. The first is a bite, 7/2 -3, 1d4 + 1 piercing, finesse.
Finesse bite.
The next one is a tentacle, 7/3 -1, 1d4 + 1 bludgeoning, finesse, agile, trip, and this one has grab. So if you get hit with the tentacle, done.
Yeah, you are locked on.
Yeah. And then they've got the spear, which is 5, 0, -5 for that third attack, and then 1d6 + 1 piercing.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a ranged attack, which is 7/2 -3, 20 feet thrown, 1d6 + 1 piercing.
Right.
So, nothing amazing. I mean, I think they would just be annoying more than anything, but I think it would be a very fun thematic combat.
Yeah.
But they do have one last ability, and it is that coward ability, their escape ability. It has a 2 action called Jet, and they just move 60 feet in a straight line through the water and do not trigger reactions.
Okay, cool. I dig that. Very simple, but very thematic.
Yeah, it's also very cephalopod. So like when octopuses, when they smash all their tentacles together, they just explode in the opposite direction. So this is a real thing that those creatures can do, and I think this is a really cool way of making it work in Pathfinder. 60 feet isn't too much. It's enough. It's more than their speed to make it valuable.
Yeah.
And not triggering reactions is pretty fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but 60 feet's a lot when it comes to people who have to make athletics checks to swim at all. And then if you fail that, you don't make any progress. If you critically fail it, you're sinking, and that you have to like basically critically succeed to do like 10 feet worth or something like that. You're not catching this thing if it's getting away.
For sure. Yeah. I just mean it wasn't too much in the way that it's double so it's 25 feet per action, so it'd be 50 feet. So it's only an extra 10 feet that this thing's getting.
Right.
But it is just out of dodge all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's a quick zip. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I just quickly checked underwater combat too, or aquatic combat. And it basically says that range attacks that do slashing or bludgeoning automatically miss. Anything that's piercing works normally, but has its ranged halved. It doesn't say anything about thrown in particular. There's a part of me that thinks that thrown just doesn't work the same as, say, loosing a bow underwater. I think the string of a bow is going to pass through the water a bit faster than, say, someone's, arm muscles. But maybe probably Paizo just wanted to avoid being too specific about it all. But yeah, that spear with the thrown trait, it's 20 feet. But keep in mind that is 20 feet outside of water. They are not specifying in the water, so it actually would only be about 10 feet underwater, which is never a great range for a thrown weapon at the end of the day.
No, it's not. But
a lot of time it's easier. It's easier to just step in and strike because you get higher chance to hit and more damage.
Or if not more damage, I agree with you completely. Yeah. I'd probably run it with the 20 feet range because when I just think it would be more interesting and it would give them a little more staying power.
Yep.
14 HP is one hit from a fighter at third level.
You know what I would do? I would do. I would almost do we're about to get into homebrew. Yeah. Splash screen. Good call. Good call.
I can feel it coming.
I almost wouldn't, but I would, because they're throwing away a weapon that's, they might consider valuable, or who knows with their intelligence, holy or special to them or something. But throwing it away doesn't make much sense to me for them. They almost want to, I don't know, just like have something between them and their enemy, I guess. But it'd be really cool to see some sort of action that involves them jetting away and launching their spear at the same time. Using that propulsion in opposite directions to sort of, launch it more precision-like. So maybe that, and now that I've said that word, maybe that's what would be cool is like if they maybe they spent a third action to jet away, but they launch it and they get like 1d6, precision damage on top of the regular thrown damage or something like that. Be kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that. I would just give them the 20 feet thrown, because they have a -1 intelligence. And when I picture doing underwater combat, I picture 3-dimensional underwater combat.
Sure.
Which means as soon as it hits, if the PC pulls it out or, whatever, it's just going to start floating to the bottom.
Right.
So they can just jet down and get it.
And go get it again. Oh, that's a good call. I didn't think of that. That's a really good call.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing 2-dimensional underwater combat, then it's...
Yeah, which is generally what you're doing with the way maps work. It's tough to navigate. Yeah, it's already tough to navigate, someone flying, let alone going both directions for the underwater. But yeah, if you're bold enough to go ahead and do it, your whole group has your head around it. I think that's a really cool element, definitely, to add to that combat. Because even then, you say the PC pulling it out. There's nothing to say that thing sticks in. Never with a thrown weapon is it assumed that something sticks in. You usually assume like an arrow has become destroyed, and we love to imagine that you're covered in them at the end of a combat if you keep getting hit. But or they're all
just
on your
all
shield,
Boromir
like that.
And shit.
But generally speaking, you would assume that the thing grazed your target and fell to the ground. But in this case, hit the target and just started sinking, which means it is available for them to catch with a jet away. That could really...
Yeah, especially if it doesn't meet their AC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig that a lot.
I've always liked the idea that AC minus, 5 or whatever actually hits the armor and then just bounces off, as opposed to you deke out of it. Like, I always liked having a range in my mind of where that armor starts and where your dexterity ends.
Yeah.
And I know there's that's actually listed in Pathfinder. Like, you can actually do that math.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got a 24 AC and you're wearing a +4 breastplate, 20, anything over 20 hits you.
Right.
And just bounces off the breastplate, and anything under 20, you actually deke out of the way. But I'm not going to do that math for every PC every time. So I normally just do -4. Yeah.
That's why I've always been, much to everyone around me's chagrin, apparently, a big fan of the stamina system, because I love the stamina system for the sake of half of what you go through is glancing blows and exhaustion, and swatting them away. And it's not necessarily dexterity versus armor versus thick skin. This is me defending myself, and then when my stamina is out, my defenses are, I'm exhausted. My defenses are now no longer working, and I'm now getting cut. I'm now getting stabbed. I'm now getting wounded, and it's dangerous now entered the combat for me. And I love that divide. Even if the math doesn't always work out in the best, kind of fantasy in our minds, I've always, ever since we played Starfinder, I've always enjoyed that system. There's a danger when you hit HP. Like, it feels scary, and it's easy to recover stamina once the combat's done. But combat is exhausting, and I just love that idea of, instead of trying to imagine how high my dex is or my armor is for my AC, which I do appreciate. I do love that kind of thinking through. But I like the stamina system better. It feels a little more grounded to me.
I hear you. I actually do really like the idea of the stamina system. I just don't like the execution currently.
It's not a perfect execution, yeah, and it's a variant rule here in 2E, and it's very akin to what Starfinder First Edition did, but they did add a few extra feats to complement it. But the problem with those is they feel like obligated feats as opposed to, use the variant rule, get these feats for free kind of thing, right? They should have kind of gone that direction instead. Instead, you feel obligated to get these, otherwise you're going to be at a tremendous disadvantage kind of thing. So a reimagining of that would be amazing. Should they bother to do it in the remaster? But I don't think they're actually covering much of the way of the variant rules for the remaster. So I think we're
hopefully they do something with it in Starfinder 2E, and then maybe maybe that becomes a playable game for me. Because currently Starfinder 1 just isn't it for me. Even without the stamina system, I don't think it would be it for me. But I have high hopes for the system. And I think there's a possibility where I find it. But, subscribe to us on Patreon, and maybe we'll do a Starfinder 2 whenever that comes out.
Maybe they'll have space Grindylows. You never know.
Yeah. I think there were. It felt like there were.
There was space everything. It's ridiculous. They had the most ridiculous creatures, and I loved it. I loved how absurd that shit got. But sometimes you're like, really? I'm not really going to include that one in my campaign, I don't think. But I'm glad you did
it. Yeah, for sure. As far as changing them, I do like that like 3-action propulsion spear throw idea where you're using momentum in opposite directions. I think that's really neat. Yeah. But I honestly don't think I would run these as creatures. Like, they just scream minion to me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just swarm them with a sea hag.
Yeah, absolutely. You find them in small schools, find out they're all, part of a collective or a commune. And that commune has been worshipping a sea hag, and that sea hag's been worshipping an Algolthu master, and you got your whole undead campaign or underwater campaign happening. Undead, make it an undead Algolthu master.
It can be both.
Yeah, okay.
The lich Algolthu master.
Yeah, why not? But yeah, that good starting point for the some of the more terrifying ideas we've come up with when it comes to water-based or coastal-based campaigns, such as when we covered the Kraken and that Scion, whatever it was that we covered in one of the last ones.
Oh yeah, that Scion was crazy.
Yeah, really cool. But yeah, it's a cool creature, although
deep
simple,
Scion.
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. It's a minion. It's not, It's cool that, obviously in the 1E adventure here we have a special one, a giant one. So by all means, homebrew your one that's a bit of a leader or a chieftain or some such for these schools, and that could be really fun. But by no means a BBEG type of creature.
No. If I wasn't gonna run them as minions for like a sea hag, I would probably run them as like an intermittent encounter. So like you're on a ferry going somewhere, the ferry gets attacked by Grindylows, just as a way to introduce your players to underwater combat. I think this could be a really interesting way to do that. But for the most part, like you said, these are cannon fodder, and I don't see a way currently to use them differently, but we would love to hear about it if you do.
I love. I do have a tendency to enjoy the idea of creating having a small creature that's already in the lore, giving you some wiggle room to make it bigger. So you might remember my idea for what are they called? The little like illithid rats, where their intelligence is heightened, and the more they're around.
Oh, the cranium rats.
Yeah, and the more they're around each other, the more intelligent they grow. Suddenly, your BBEG is a giant, incredibly giant swarm of them. Or you might remember the Roper idea that I had, where it's literally like a stalagmite that reaches this roof of an unbelievably large cavern, and it's this impossibly monstrous ancient thing. Why not a Grindylow that's bigger than the Kraken, that's just survived that long and grown that large? That could be really fun.
I love that. That's amazing.
When you tell me it can grow and it can grow larger and large, I'm like, yes, let's do that.
Right. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. Do you have anything else?
I think they're fun little minion fodder for sure. Have a little fun with them, and good luck with your underwater combat. That's all I have to say. I feel like never exploring it. So tell us how it went.
And if you want to check, yeah, exactly. And if you want to check out some of those other episodes we mentioned, Cranium Rats was part of our Lithid Suite, episode 27, and Deep Scion was episode 80, as well as, again, Sea Hags was episode 7, one of our early hits, I think. And Piercers and Ropers was episode 64.
And the Algolfu Master we did with the Roll for Intent GM Trevor on our episode 100 extravaganza. And that was a really fun up too.
Yeah.
When he went conspiracy crazy. It was awesome.
That was a that's a really good episode. Episode 100 is fantastic. And if you like this, you can help us out. Maybe help us get an underwater campaign started or start Starfinder 2. You can find us over at patreon.com/unchartednorth. $5 a month will get you a handwritten thank you letter and a theme button. For $10 a month, you can suggest a creature. Maybe you want to hear about the Sea Hag in 2E. That's a great place to do it. Or if there's something adjacent to like that Deep Scion in either Pathfinder or any other system. We're open to covering creatures from any system out there. This is just 2E's currently our bread and butter. If you want to hear more D&D stuff, everything episode 100 and below is all 5E, so that's all still evergreen content. If you want to get some merch, maybe you like our Critty logo on my cap here, or maybe you like the Uncharted compass on Freeman's background. You can find some cool merch at unchartednorth.com/shop. There's hats, t-shirts, coffee mugs, the usual stuff. It's all done by Teespring, I believe, and their merch is decent. I love this hat.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
I wear it all the time. So, if you want to find us on any of the social media platforms, you can find all that stuff linked in the description below. Or if you're watching on YouTube, it's been scrolling by in the bottom right or bottom left, depending on which way you're looking at it. If you want to know how we built this show, you can go over to encounterthis.ca and you can find our show notes and our reading list. So the show notes are the exact document that we used to produce this show, minus the stat blocks, which we'll leave a link to Archive of Nethys, as well as any extra reading. We'll include China Mieville on that list with his Pathfinder Chronicles Guide to the River Kingdom. And yeah, if you want to watch the video of this, see all the images, youtube.com/@encounterpod. If you are listening to the audio version, please rate and review on your platform of choice. If you are on the YouTubes, hit that bell, subscribe to be notified, all that YouTuber stuff that I'm supposed to say.
Some comments on there too.
Most importantly,
happy to respond to them. Yeah, we'd love to hear the stories. That's one of the easiest ways to do it.
Exactly. Love those comments. And if you want more of a direct access, you can always go to unchartednorth.com/Discord, and that will jump you right into our Discord server, where you'll have direct access to us, and we can chat, talk about your aquatic campaign, talk about any ideas you have to add to that giant Grindylow, or even we're around for advice too. If you want to know how we would run Sea Hags in 2E now, or what kind of creatures we would pair with them, we're always down to answer those kind of questions. We've got a great little community, especially in our Patreon.
Yeah, I was going to say,
big shout out.
Our little Discord community has lots of advice to offer. Not just the two of us. We have lots of people that we bounce ideas off of all the time, and they have lots of cool ideas like we don't think of. So we love listening to what they have to say after these episodes, these release.
Yeah, and the corrections in there are always fantastic. We've got some people who are great with the rules. We've got some people who are great with the lore, and we've got some people who just drop dank memes or what they made for dinner that night. And I'm here for every bit of it. So,
yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, but we're going to pull the chute for today, listeners, and we will be back in 2 weeks, and hopefully I'll be healthy, and we will see you then. I'm really glad we're back on this schedule. It's nice to be doing this again.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, friends.
Yeah. Well, bye. Outro. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Until next time, creatures, thanks, as always, for listening to Encounter This.